Hello and welcome to our fifth session, the one before the last. Hope you're enjoying these sessions. Before we get into today's session, let's start with a review. Firstly, how are you managing with the menu plan? Remember, your goal is to eat according to the menu plan as accurately as you're able to, as often as you can. There is no prescription here. We are developing new habits, and new habits take time and require patience and a nurturing and loving attitude. Second, how are you doing in increasing your activity level? As the famous mystic poet has said so beautifully, if all you can do is crawl, start crawling. And I'll leave it at that, as I'm sure you know what you need to do to increase your activity level. Thirdly, how are you coping with your stress? Hopefully you're learning to incorporate healthy coping skills while practicing self-compassion and having a non-judgmental presence, while also questioning your life's direction and maybe doing better at prioritizing so you can eliminate any stress that may come about as a result of an incoherence between your values and your current life situation and any misaligned priorities. Okay, and lastly, hopefully you are able to follow this guidance of eating only when you're hungry and fasting overnight. And again, none of these are easy practices, but they are practices. So they will come to you in time, and the more practice them, the more of a habit they will be. So be patient with yourself and take your time with them. Next, for today's session, we're going to talk about sleep and cravings, and we'll dig a little deeper into sleep. And you'll soon understand why I've clumped these two topics together. We have already touched on why adequate sleep is essential for putting our bodies into fat burning mode, as that is the time in the day that growth hormone is produced. And growth hormone, as you remember, helps build muscle and repair tissue, which is obviously essential as you want to be building and maintaining muscle mass, and also having all your organ systems functioning at their peak, which requires the regular maintenance that is provided by growth hormone at night. Also, however, sleep is also essential for body composition as it affects a couple other very essential hormones that influence our food intake and activity level. Now here, I want to take a quick minute to say you're learning a lot, but more important than anything else is the practice of self-compassion. So it's good to know how good sleep will put your body into fat burning mode, but I want to be cautious here and let you know that the purpose here is not to create further guilt if your lifestyle just cannot accommodate for these changes, or if you can't for any reason to use this then as an excuse to not take care of the other areas in your life that you can change. Okay, so information is great. Let's use it to the best that our lifestyle currently can accommodate. And so remember, no guilt, no shame here, but also no excuses. So why is sleep so important in fat loss? Well, here's a scenario which we've all experienced at some point in our lives. You're feeling sleepy at work, and because of that, you may be tempted to reach for a cup of coffee or several cups and a donut for a quick shot of energy. Later, you may skip the gym because you're just so exhausted, and you'll pick up takeout on the way home, again because you just either have no time to cook or just too exhausted to cook again. And when you finally find yourself back in your bed, you're likely too wound up to sleep from all the stimulants you've been taking in through the day, and the fact that you haven't been your best self throughout the day. And this becomes then a vicious cycle where lack of sleep leads to reliance on all these stimulants that then as a result just start a cascading event of negative habits. And so this then becomes a vicious cycle, and the immediate result then is that you're able to fall off sleepiness in the immediate time frame, but ultimately there's unwanted pounds and poor food choices are made with a lack of exercise that then sets the stage for obesity and further sleep loss. So how does sleep affect your weight? Well, those wonderful hormones again. So what studies have found is that ghrelin, being the go hormone that tells you to eat, that you're hungry and you should be eating, is increased when you are sleep deprived. Okay, so more ghrelin means more cravings, more hunger. The other hormone that is also affected by sleep is a hormone known as leptin. And that is a hormone that tells you, okay, you're satiated, you can stop eating now, your body has got enough nutrients and it doesn't need any more. However, when you're sleep deprived, you have less of this hormone. So then there's no satiation. You continue eating because you're just not getting the signal, enough of this signal provided by leptin. And so this combination of high ghrelin combined with low leptin causes an increase in food intake because you're told to eat and you're never told to stop eating. Secondly, these hormones also affect the rate that your body uses energy, which is your metabolism. So what they have found, again, is that the same hormone that tells you to stop eating, leptin, tends to increase energy expenditure by increasing your overall metabolism, your resting metabolism. While ghrelin, the hormone that tells you to eat, when this is in high amounts, it tells you to rest and lowers physical activity. And these are at least in animal models, but we are very similar to these same animal models that are studied. So more likely than not, we are also affected by these same hormones in the same manner. And so you can see again the lack of sleep causing less leptin and more ghrelin causes a lowered metabolism as well as a decrease in your likelihood to exercise or be active. And to summarize, as you can see in this graph here, sleep loss results in an imbalance between energy that's taken in and energy that is expended. Okay, now although this may have various evolutionary reasons, the brain uses mainly glucose for its energy, and so an exhausted brain on no sleep is going to do whatever it can to preserve its glucose levels and ask you to take more in. Perhaps lack of sleep is seen by the body as a stressor, so the body kicks into the self-preservation mode, trying to hold on to whatever it can in terms of energy in case of maybe another stressor that might be on its way. So let's say lack of food, and so perhaps the stress of lack of sleep is bringing about these changes that is genetically your body's natural way of preserving itself. So regardless though of the why and the how, you can see why adequate sleep is essential in combating cravings and ensuring that you feel physically and mentally capable of increasing your activity level. So there's so much talk about sleep in, various forms of media, the news, newspapers, articles online, things that circulate on social media. Do we really need it as much as it is emphasized? Well, it seems that as a society, we are getting less and less sleep with each passing decade. Now, as a technology, our fast-paced lives, our more materialistic society that's driving us to continue accumulating more and more, and so we work harder and harder to achieve that end, who knows? But one thing is true, and that is that our lives are far from simple, and we are, as a result, getting less and less sleep. And so perhaps one of the first things you may need to do in order to put your sleep back on the right track is to first simplify your life. Again, this may require a bit of introspection and a deep look at your priorities and your life goals and dreams, etc., to determine what you may need to put a greater focus on, perhaps sleep, and what may need to go further down on your list of priorities. So as you can see from some of the statistics here, as a society today, we are getting less sleep than we ever did. So again, emphasizing a simple life and perhaps a deeper look at your priorities, here's a beautiful quote. A simple life is not seeing how little we can get by with. That's poverty. But how efficiently we can put first things first. When you're clear about your purpose and your priorities, you can painlessly discard whatever does not support these, whether it's clutter in your cabinets or commitments on your calendar. So you may just need to prioritize more beach days, or whatever you're able to do at this moment in time. So, how much sleep is too much or too little? Well, good sleep, although it can vary from one individual to another, on average, a healthy, beneficial sleep is about 7 to 8 hours a night. Any more, and it can not only increase your chances of chronic disease, but it's also been shown to lead to low moods and can actually worsen depression. So we're not looking to get any more than 8 hours of sleep, and hopefully no less than 7 hours. Now, one of the easiest ways you can help improve your sleep is to just become aware of your sleep habits, your routines before bedtime, to avoid stimulants, including caffeine, alcohol, and heavy and spicy or sugary foods about 4 to 6 hours prior to bedtime. And you also don't want to exercise because that is also stimulant about 2 hours prior to bedtime. You also want to ensure a comfortable sleeping environment, so you want to have comfortable bedding. Your room temperature should be slightly cooler than what we are usually okay with, on when we're active. So our sleep most comfortable temperature is slightly a degree lower than whatever you're comfortable with during the day. You want to block out all light and all distracting noise if possible. And if you're doing all of that and you're still finding that you're sleepless, difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, waking frequently throughout the night and having a hard time going back to sleep, or waking up feeling unrefreshed, let's have a chat about this in our one-on-one session, because there might be other things than simply prioritization of your sleep and sleep hygiene that might be a factor here that we can figure out and see how we can address together. Okay, so apart from lack of sleep leading to increased cravings and actual hunger for food due to the imbalance in the hormones we talked about, let's take a closer look at cravings. Now, I've got to say I love this picture because I've been caught with this exact look on my face many nights feeding my cravings. And so I want to say nothing is abnormal or wrong with you if you have cravings. And even if you give in to your cravings, it is absolutely normal. Just like anything else, it is only when it falls on the extreme side of the scale that it can present as a problem. Now, usually there are two causative factors for cravings. One is nutritional deficiencies, where your body is trying to correct the nutritional deficiency by basically asking you to eat. And sometimes asking you to eat very specific foods that will help provide your body with what it needs. In extreme cases, such cravings can be in, for example, pregnant women or breastfeeding women who crave eating paper or chalk or dirt. And there's a medical term for that known as pica, which is medically understood to be your body's attempt to obtain vitamins and minerals that are missing through normal food consumption. Now, regarding number one, in pregnant women, cravings outside of this extreme pica medical condition, where there's cravings for normal healthy food, that is also absolutely normal. And that can also be normal in non-pregnant women in cases of extreme physical activity. You might find you have increased appetite for certain foods. As well, for some women, just prior and sometimes in the first few days of our menstrual cycle, we may also have an increased appetite or cravings for certain foods. And sometimes these cravings, again, are simply a signal that the body needs more vitamins and minerals to remake the blood that it has lost. Or it might just be a signal for increased calories. Again, nothing abnormal with this, as the body is trying to um, get what it needs through these cravings. Now, apart from the very obvious extreme medical conditions of cravings, we all suffer from cravings due to nutritional deficiencies to a degree. Our food supply does not contain the same nutrients that it did 100 years ago because, one, commercial food processing destroys vitamins. Secondly, our soils are really depleted in a lot of uh, a lot of the essential minerals, including selenium, chromium, zinc, and others. As well, fruits and vegetables are produced only for the sake of production, with heavy fertilization, without the re-addition of nutrients back into the soil. And lastly, our meat products are also depleted, our animal products. So livestock are fed grains as opposed to being allowed to graze on pastures. Grains, as we know, are the perfect food for fattening up livestock, but are very nutrient deplete. And so our dairy, eggs, and meats are also nutrient deplete unless we buy free range and pasture raised animal products. And so one way to counteract this number one cause of craving being nutritional deficiencies is to ensure a whole foods diet, eating locally and seasonally as much as possible. That would ensure that you're getting the maximum nutrients from your foods that you're able to. And secondly, to take a good quality multivitamin daily. Now, about the second cause of cravings being the reward system, we have already learned how food intake is controlled by hunger and satiety signals that are brought about by hormones, leptin, and ghrelin. Further to that, we also have neurotransmitters that reward us when we eat foods that are high in sugar and high in fats. Now, a normal, healthy reward system would be in a healthy, non-craving individual, whereas abnormal or beyond normal is any individual whose reward system is connected to foods. So we all do this to a degree again. We would then eat to feel good as a way to, again, if we've got a bad mood or if we're bored or, we just don't have enough stimulation and our feel good hormones are down, we might turn to food to produce those same neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin, to help us feel good. So interesting for you to know that almost all addictions are due to the reward systems working. The reward system is actually healthy and beneficial, speaking from evolutionary terms. It gets you doing the same exact thing that has rewarded you in the past. And survival for all animal species depends on maximizing contact with things that are beneficial. For example, foods that are nutrient rich, like fatty, sugary rich foods, and taking actions that are beneficial. And minimizing contact with, again, things and actions that are harmful. So that basically sums up the reward system. Now, the trouble is, due to our genetics, we have benefited from eating high sugary and fat foods. However, this does not serve us anymore in our current society when rich, fatty, sugary foods are just plentiful. Now, what is my point here? And that is that you may be addicted to certain sugary or fatty foods. And if we are to deal with food addictions as we would deal with any other addiction, the most important thing you can do is to replace this habit with another more beneficial habit. So turning to high sugar, high fat foods may have been your way of dealing with a stressor. It helps it distract and it gives you the feel good gratification you need, albeit not a healthy coping mechanism. Now, as with any and all changes in brain circuitry, you want to stop the reinforcement of this neural pathway by pausing for about 7 seconds, so no more. You just want to pause, count to 7 before you take a bite of that delicious cookie or pie or whatever it might be, the bag of chips. So, in essence, you basically want to short circuit your reward system. Now, it is as simple as counting to 7 each time you get a craving. Even if you were to continue to give in to your craving, those 7 seconds that you pause will over time give you the results you need, which is a change in the brain circuitry with regards to a change in the habitual dealing with whatever usually leads you to give in to whatever cravings you might have. But so if during those 7 seconds your mind guides you to a more healthy and pleasurable activity, put down whatever you were going to eat and take that nature walk or warm relaxing bath or get your nails done or whatever it may be that may give you a more satisfactory pleasure. One important factor to remember here is that you've got to have these alternatives on hand on your fingertips. And so take a pad and a pen and make a list of alternatives to, binge eating and that kind of thing. And post it on your fridge, on your bathroom mirror, or if you want to be more private, inside your pocket or in your wallet, especially if you get frequent temptations when you're shopping, grocery shopping, to have something that would help remind you that, wait, you don't have to do this. You have all these other wonderful, healthy alternatives that you can enjoy just as much. But again, no worries if you must give in. Those 7 seconds you've taken are already helping bring you to a point where you can better change this habit. Now, in your email with the link to this webinar, you have also received a link to a talk by an MD who's a vegan and actually recommends eliminating all cheese and meat. However, for our purposes, I want you to listen to this in your own time, simply for the fact that your goal is to lower your simple sugar intake. And he provides great information with regards to the brain's workings and how sugar is as powerful an addictive substance as cocaine is. Again, this is not to, provide you with any excuse to continue this addictive behavior, but for you to have some self-compassion for yourself and to realize, for me to put sugar aside will be difficult because it is a difficult addiction and I need to be patient with myself and give myself time. So you have the link when you have a chance. It's about 40 minutes, but you really only need to watch the first bit when he talks about sugar. Okay? So just quickly, why is sugar such an addictive substance? Well, this is how sugar addiction comes about. In most mammals, including rats and humans, sweet receptors, which have evolved in ancestral times in environments that were poor in sugar, they are not adapted to high concentrations of sweet tasting foods. And so the high stimulation of these receptors by sugar-rich diets, like those that we normally tend to eat in our North American standard diet, it generates an abnormally high reward signal in the brain, which then overrides any self-control and other food regulatory mechanisms like the ghrelin and leptin we talked about, specifically leptin that tells you to stop eating. And so, I've made a mistake here. This hormone ghrelin, it should be leptin. That leptin does not work like it should because you are just being rewarded to such a degree that leptin is just, not even heard. The signal of leptin is not heard. Now again, from an evolutionary point of view, it makes sense that foods rich in fat and sugar is attractive because such foods can be rapidly converted into energy and can be stored as fat if not used. However, in our society where sweets are readily available, this process no longer works in our favor. So what's the solution here? Well, firstly, those 7 seconds to short-circuiting your reward system are essential, okay? So if you can, remember, pause, count to 7. If you must have whatever it is you want to have, go ahead, enjoy it, and enjoy it mindfully. But if you can, of course, set yourself on a different path and go do another activity. Secondly, you want to slowly begin the process of eliminating sugars from your way of eating, from your menu plan, because the more sugars and processed foods you eat, the stronger your cravings for those foods. Now, I want to show you about 2 minutes of this talk by the same doctor that I spoke about earlier, which is really inspiring and encouraging, and his solution you will learn about in the 2 minutes that he's going to speak. So let me get this going. Here we go.
Go all away and get all that stuff out of your don't stick your toe in the swimming pool. Jump in and see what the water is like. And the reason I say that is if you have a healthy meal on Wednesday and another one on Sunday, your cholesterol does not fall. You don't lose an ounce. If you have diabetes, it does not get better. It works to do it all the way. But you only do it for 3 weeks. Now, the nice thing about this is what you weren't expecting is that 3 weeks is all the time you need to adapt. Think back. How many of you ever switched from whole milk to skim milk? Let me see. Okay, when you did, how did the skim milk taste at first? Watery, kind of horrible. But then after 3 weeks, what happens? It tastes okay? Okay. Did you ever go back and then have whole milk again? What did that taste like? It's thick, it's greasy, it's creamy. Well, your whole life it was okay until you had a 3-week break from it, and now you can't drink it anymore. I'm going to tell you a secret. Your taste buds have what is, for all intents and purposes, a little thermostat that is your food preference. You have one for fat, one for sugar, and one for salt. And it's set based on what they have been in touch with over the preceding 5 or 6 days. So if you go low salt tomorrow, I guarantee you'll hate it. If you stick with it, you will adapt, and then you will not let, you'll go to the movies and somebody will put all kinds of salt on the popcorn, you can't eat it. If you go to a totally low-fat vegan diet and then this is not your routine, for the first day or two it seems odd, it seems too light, but you start to adapt, and then after 3 weeks you go out and say, I'm going to have that double bacon cheese monster burger, and you do, and it doesn't really taste like what you had hoped. The preferences for today are set by what you had yesterday, and so that's why we have a good clean break, but just for a short period of time. And the last.
So his solution is to eliminate your cravings completely in 3 weeks by going cold turkey, and that will definitely do the trick. However, it isn't for everyone. If you find you have a strange relationship with food and your cravings may stem from deep-seated emotional eating, you may want to explore this a little more slowly while also practicing self-love and self-compassion in the process. And as he emphasized, your taste buds today depend on what you ate in the preceding 5 days or so. And so even if you start cutting things out slowly over time, the benefits will stack slowly on top of each other until you're at a point where you might have lowered cravings. It might be in 3 weeks, it might be in 3 months or 3 years, whatever is comfortable for you. Now, I want to make a very important point here, and that is that no, it is not all about willpower. Making healthy food choices isn't always a sign of your strong willpower. Most of us have wrongly been made to believe that it is our willpower that is at fault when we give up on our diet. And we tend to feel guilty and shame in these instances, which only worsens our unhealthy emotional relationship with food. And this needs a dramatic shift in mindset for most of us. And so here is something for you to relearn, that willpower actually comes in limited supply, which means you'll have to unlearn the notion of willpower is a muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. That actually is the exact opposite of what really happens. Because of it being in limited supply, the more you use it, the weaker it actually gets. So the key then becomes habit. Make it your goal to develop healthy habits such that you can eliminate the need to rely on your willpower constantly for making healthy food choices. Now, this is really empowering. I hope it is empowering. I feel that it should be, because most of us tend to give up on a route we take when we start to make changes about our diet, because we go all in and we go cold turkey. We're like, you know what, I'm in, I'm doing this, and I'm going to do this no matter what. And, a week in, 1 month in, we're exhausted because we're constantly putting a demand on our willpower to stick to that, salad as opposed to the burger. Okay? So you see here that this notion of willpower being a muscle is actually misunderstood. For example, let's take an example of going to the gym 3 times a week, and that is your goal. This will initially require willpower to get the ball rolling and get over the initial inertia. But once it becomes a part of your lifestyle, a habit, and something that you learn to get joy from, and there's now a strong momentum to keep you going, you may now falsely label this as a strengthened willpower, but more accurately, it is now an established habit that no longer actually requires willpower because you're really operating out of habit. I hope that makes sense. Now, very interestingly, this gym scenario actually, in another aspect, can help boost your willpower. And here's how. A recent review, so a study across 5 different studies, found that firming one's muscles, so strengthening your muscles physically, can help firm willpower. And that firmed willpower then mediates your ability to withstand immediate pain, overcome food temptation, and consume unpleasant medicines while also attending to immediately disturbing but essential information. So in a way, also your resilience, provided that doing so is seen as providing long-term benefits. So I've put the reference for the study at the bottom there if you want to check it out. But, here's another very empowering fact, and perhaps one way to help you, wake up with a willingness to lace up your shoes and go for a quick, fast-paced walk, even if it's 5 minutes, or take the stairs when you're at work, or, we've all heard park your car further down the parking lot and do a fast-paced whatever, whether it's a fast walk, or even if you can do maybe not a sprint in the parking lot because that's not safe, but whatever you can do to boost muscle power, to firm up your muscles, that can then help you actually make better decisions, better food choices, and help you overcome food temptation. Now, here are a couple other solutions for unloading the burden on your willpower. There's a link that I have also included in this email that you received, and that is a video that provides the following steps as a means of lowering the burden on your willpower where your food intake is concerned. The following steps were created by psychologists as a way to basically trick your brain into thinking it has had more food than it actually has. Now, I want you to be mindful that the opposite is also at work in our society at large, where portion sizes are getting bigger and bigger every year, and drink sizes have doubled and tripled over the past decades. So, unfortunately, where our food intake is concerned, our brains are literally getting primed by the outside marketing forces to eat and eat and eat. And so, if you're not always mindful of this and don't stop to question it, we'll definitely have a hard time swimming against the current. And that's why I put up this picture of the salmon swimming upstream, because in many ways, in many respects, eating this way means you're required to swim against the current, at least for to get the momentum going initially, to unlearn some habits and to be able to fight off the forces outside in society at large. Okay, so number one, use lighter plates. When you use lighter plates, they found that you're better able to sort of measure out how much you've actually eaten, because when you pick up your plate and you fill it with whatever you've got, if it's a heavy plate, the addition of food doesn't really change anything, so you don't really realize how much you've actually taken in. Whereas with a lighter plate, you can get a better sense of the weight that you're eating. Second, use smaller plates. Again, so this is visually. The smaller your plate, the fuller your plate looks, so the more likely you are to stop eating when you are full. Third, cut up your food. Somehow this tricks your brain into feeling like it has eaten more than it actually has. Number four, obvious, most of us already know this, don't eat in front of the TV because it's distracting and you eat mindlessly, and so you're not really paying attention to how much you've eaten. Number five, don't shop when you're hungry. Again, most of us know this, but the way to overcome this is, well, you don't have a choice. You've just left work, you've got to do grocery shopping, and you're starving. The way to go around that is to use a grocery list, as without one, you'd be more likely to go for high sugary and high calorie foods. Six, remember, deprivation always backfires. So if you're at a party and feeling like you can't have cake because you're on a quote unquote diet, well, you're more likely to break that diet. So do not ever feel like you're on a diet. I've tried my best to emphasize this. You're eating according to this menu plan as often and as frequently as you can, to the degree of accuracy that you're able to at this point in your life, okay? And everything in moderation. That means if you're at a party and there's burgers and hot dogs and there's cake, go ahead, enjoy it, okay? Perhaps if you can, watch your portion sizes, be mindful of what you're eating in the sense that you want to enjoy your meal and you want to stop when you're full. Okay, but do not ever feel like I don't ever want you to feel like you're on a diet and you can't have something, as this will backfire. So we are getting to the end. Some takeaways from today's session. Remember, sleep will affect not just your mood and energy levels, but also your food intake, as it affects those two very important hormones that affect your food intake and your metabolism and drive to be active and exercise, okay? And so make sure you're getting about 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. Secondly, simplify your life, prioritize, and maybe mark more recreational activities on your calendar, and not have so many to-do lists that you're always catching up. Perhaps prioritizing can help with that. Third, remember that as long as you're keeping to your menu plan the best thing you can, your taste buds and cravings will change slowly over time. And lastly, my recommendation is this. If food isn't an emotional comfort and there's no guilt connected to overeating and that kind of thing, and body image isn't connected to your food intake, and you're willing and able to go all in, as in eliminate all high sugar foods out of your diet for 3 weeks consistently, then go for it, as that was recommended in the video, and I completely agree. However, if any of what I just mentioned applies to you, I'd recommend that you take this process slowly, and remember, it will work just as well. Your taste buds today are dependent on what you ate yesterday. So even if you gradually begin making these changes, as I said, in 1 week's time, 2 weeks' time, 1 month's time, your taste buds and cravings will already be very different than they were the month prior, because you're stacking up the beneficial changes slowly over time. And at the end, you're still going to be at the same end results, whether you did it 3 weeks consistently or over 3 years, whatever it may be for you. Completely up to you if you want to be the rabbit or the tortoise in this race, although it's not a race. And I don't want you to see it as a race. But if you must be the tortoise, I'd prefer that for you. And you know yourself best, so do whatever works for you. As well, I want you to know that you cannot blame your willpower for your cravings. As we talked about, our hormones and the reward system is very strong. And so in such cases, you want to do your best to reach for healthier alternatives. And if you find yourself going for salty chips or wanting to spoon out a tub of ice cream to the end, do it, but do it mindfully. Remember what that means? So instead of eating out of the bag of chips, serve yourself a couple of handfuls in a nice bowl and have it sit down in your favorite spot and really enjoy it. If you want more, go for another serving, but the same way, in a bowl, enjoying it, hopefully a light bowl, a small bowl, okay? And same with ice cream. Do not eat out of the tub standing in front of the freezer. If you're going to eat whatever it is that you're going to, do it mindfully. There's no reason why you shouldn't enjoy it. And lastly, some words of encouragement. At the end of the day, we all want to live a more fulfilling life. And to start that may mean living the simple life. So, a beautiful quote, it goes, "To find the air and the water exhilarating, to be thrilled by the stars at night, to be elated over a bird's nest or a wild flower in spring. These are some of the rewards of the simple life." So as always, get out there, experiment, enjoy this process you're on, and simply enjoy, hopefully, the simple life. And if not yet, I hope that you get there.